In Edo's shadowed streets, a fallen samurai wanders, a man haunted by betrayal and bound by honor. When whispers of a conspiracy threaten the fragile peace of the shogunate, he's drawn into a web of deceit, where allies hide secrets and loyalty is a dangerous illusion. As darkness spreads through the empire, one question lingers: will his blade restore honor or drown in the shadows he serves? The streets of Edo, the sharp eyes beneath his furrowed brow, light scanned the faces around him, a labyrinth of shadows and murmurs, where the past and present coiled like restless serpents, for a way to atone for the failures that haunted his every step with the silence of a ghost. Once a samurai of a proud frame, weaving past merchants, had seen that world collapse, children darting between stores, betrayed by those his weathered face, comrades, etched with lines carved by years of hardship and loss, masterless, betrayed little of the storm that raged within. The samurai code that had bound him was a double-edged blade. Honor demanded loyalty and sacrifice. Yet the world he inhabited was steeped in deceit and shifting alliances. With every step, he bore the invisible weight of his past, the echo of his fallen lord's voice, a distant yet relentless call. As dusk bled into night, the air in Edo thickened with the mingled scents of smoke, incense, and the faint metallic temps of looming danger. Lanterns flickered against wooden walls, casting trembling light over narrow alleys that twisted like the secrets they concealed. Ryanosuke's footsteps slowed as he approached one such alley, a place where the city's pulse shifted from the open market's clamor to whispered dealings and furtive glances. From the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked and hooded, the face hidden beneath a veil of darkness. The informant's voice was low and cautious, barely more than a breath. "Takeda-san," the voice murmured, "the peace you seek is but a fragile mask. Beneath it, forces gather that threaten to rend the shogunate asunder." Ryunosuke met the gaze that flickered from beneath the hood, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Who are you? What do you want of me?" "An ally," came the whispered reply. "Your blade and your honor are needed once more." The shadows grow long, and the empire trembles on the edge of chaos. The Ronin's jaw tightened as memories surged of battles fought, of comrades lost, of a code that demanded more than mere survival. He had long wandered, a solitary figure cast out from the world he once served. Yet something in the informant's words stirred a flicker of resolve deep within him. "Speak plainly," Ryunosuke said, his voice steady despite the unease that coiled in his chest. "What is this conspiracy? Who threatens the shogunate?" The informant glanced back toward the twisting streets, then leaned closer. "There are those within the halls of power who betray the very code they swear to uphold. Corruption seeps like poison, and a storm gathers under the banner of Lord Matsuda Nobuyuki." The name struck Ryunosuke like a sudden gust of cold wind. He had heard whispers of Matsuda, a daimyo whose ambition was whispered in fearful tones. Yet to hear it confirmed in such a manner was a summons impossible to ignore. "Why come to me?" Ryunosuke asked, suspicion sharpening his tone. "Because you are no mere pawn," the informant said. "You carry the weight of honor, and that makes you dangerous to those who seek to bend the empire to their will. But it also makes you a beacon for those who still believe in justice." As the informant slipped back into the night, melting into the labyrinthine alleys, Ryunosuke stood alone beneath a flickering lantern. The shadows danced across his worn samurai attire, and the city's restless heartbeat throbbed around him. In that moment, the burden of his past pressed heavily, but so too did the faint promise of purpose. He tightened his grip on the hilt of his katana, feeling the cold steel whisper its ancient call. The path ahead was fraught with peril, and trust was a scarce commodity. Yet Ryunosuke knew that to walk away now was to abandon the code he had sworn to uphold. With a final glance at the darkened streets, he stepped forward, the first tentative stride into the empire of shadows. The night deepened, and the city whispered its secrets, some meant to be heard, others buried forever. But for Takeda Ryunosuke, the unraveling had begun, and the journey from wandering shadow to avenger of honor was set in motion. As the sounds of Ido's nocturnal life swelled around him, the clatter of wooden sandals on stone, the distant laughter of a tavern, the soft rustle of silk, Ryunosuke's mind sharpened. Questions crowded in, each one a thread to be pulled, a mystery to be unraveled. The fragile peace was a lie, and beneath it stirred forces that could consume them all. He would need allies, cunning, and above all, a steadfast heart. For in the shadows of the empire, trust was as fleeting as the dying light, and betrayal lurked behind every whispered promise. And so, beneath the low-hanging clouds and the flickering lanterns of Ido, the Ronin's tale began, a story of honor tested, of secrets unearthed, and of a lone warrior's quest to restore balance before the empire fell into darkness. The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Could Ryunosuke navigate the maze of deception and emerge unbroken, or would the shadows claim him as they had so many before? Only the dawn would tell. The moon hung low over Ido, its pale light casting long, wavering shadows across the narrow streets where Takeda Ryunosuke tread with measured steps. The city, alive with the quiet murmurs of night, seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the storm gathering beneath its surface. Ryunosuke's sharp eyes pierced the darkness, every sound and movement around him a potential threat or clue. He was no stranger to danger, but tonight the air felt heavier, charged with secrets waiting to be unearthed. His journey began hours earlier, when a chance encounter in the bustling market district had yielded a fragment of information, whispers of a gathering among the city's elite, one that did not bode well for the fragile peace maintained by the shogunate. The cryptic symbols scrawled on the paper he now studied were more than mere script. They were a map into the heart of a conspiracy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the empire. Ryunosuke's training as a samurai had taught him the value of patience and observation. He folded the paper carefully, concealing it within the folds of his simple kimono. The austere garb he wore was a conscious choice. Not only did it mark him as a Ronin, but it allowed him to move through the city unnoticed, blending into the tapestry of Ido's restless nights. As he navigated the labyrinthine alleys, the distant clamor of a festival drifted faintly on the breeze. Lanterns bobbed like fireflies, their soft glow illuminating the faces of townsfolk celebrating the season. Yet beneath the veneer of joy, Ryunosuke sensed a darker rhythm, a beat that matched the quickening pulse of his own heart. His thoughts were interrupted by a familiar silhouette emerging from the shadows. Aiko Hanami, graceful and composed despite the tension in her eyes, approached with the stealth of a cat. She moved with an elegance born of necessity, her plain kimono belying the dangerous role she played within the city's elite circles. Without a word, she pressed a small scroll into Ryunosuke's palm, her fingers lingering briefly in a silent pact of trust. "They meet at the old shrine beyond the eastern gate," she whispered, voice barely audible over the rustle of silk and paper. "Tomorrow night, be ready." Ryunosuke nodded, the weight of responsibility settling firmly on his shoulders. The path ahead was fraught with peril, yet the call of justice and redemption spurred him onward. The following day, Ryunosuke found himself seated in the dim corner of a tea-house frequented by nobles and officials. The air was thick with the fragrance of jasmine and the subtle tension of veiled conversations. His gaze swept the room, noting the furtive glances exchanged between men clad in finery, their smiles tight and eyes sharper than any blade. Minutes stretched into hours as Ryunosuke pieced together fragments of coded language and exchanged glances. The coded message from Aiko proved invaluable. It confirmed his suspicions that a faction within the government sought to destabilize the shogunate for personal gain. Yet, the deeper he delved, the more he felt the walls closing in. Trust was a scarce commodity, and every ally could be a potential foe. The Ronin's stoic nature was tested as he balanced the urge to act swiftly against the necessity of caution. His past failures whispered in his mind, reminding him that one misstep could spell doom not only for himself, but for the fragile peace he sought to preserve. As twilight fell, Ryunosuke returned to the rooftop that overlooked Edo's sprawling maze. The city lights flickered like distant stars, a mirror to the constellations above. The toll of a temple bell echoed through the night air, a solemn reminder of time's relentless march. He allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection, the tension coiling within him like a drawn bowstring. How far was he willing to go? How much of his honor could he bend before it broke? These questions gnawed at him, yet beneath the doubt burned an unyielding flame of determination. The conspirator's web was tightening, and Ryunosuke knew that the night's whispers would soon give way to the clangor of clashing swords and shattered alliances. But for now, he was a shadow among shadows, a silent guardian poised to strike in the name of justice. The murmur of Edo's bustling streets faded behind the sliding wooden door as Takeda Ryunosuke stepped into the dim interior of the tea house. The low hum of whispered conversations and the faint clink of ceramic cups filled the air, mingling with the subtle scent of incense curling from a small brazier in the corner. It was a place hidden from the prying eyes of commoners and officials alike at crossroads for secrets, whispered beneath the veneer of civility. Ryunosuke's sharp eyes scanned the room, settling on a slender figure seated alone at a low table near the shadowed back wall. She was clad in a plain kimono, its muted tones belying the grace of her posture and the keen intelligence glimmering in her dark eyes. Iko Hanami, he approached with measured steps, the soft leather soles of his getter barely audible against the polished wooden floor. "Iko-san," he greeted quietly, bowing slightly. She looked up, a flicker of cautious recognition crossing her face before it settled into a guarded smile. "Takeda Dono," she replied, her voice steady yet laced with curiosity. "I did not expect you so soon." Ryunosuke settled opposite her, his gaze unwavering. The city whispers of unrest, and the shadows grow longer. "I find myself drawn to the source." Aiko nodded, folding her hands on the table. "I have heard much as well. Corruption festers in the halls of power, and those who once upheld honor now play dangerous games." Their conversation wove carefully through the veiled references and coded language that marked the dangerous dance of spies and informants. Aiko revealed fragments of whispered plots, secret gatherings in the dead of night, and officials whose loyalty was for sale to the highest bidder. Ryunosuke listened, the weight of his own past losses pressing heavily on his shoulders. As twilight deepened outside, the tea house grew quieter, the air thick with the unspoken understanding that their meeting was more than mere chance. They were two figures cast from different paths, now entwined by the fragile threads of necessity. Later, beneath the blooming cherry trees that lined a quiet street, Ryunosuke found Kenta Moriyama waiting. The broad-shouldered ronin bore the scars of battles past, his armor worn but meticulously maintained. His face broke into a rough smile as Ryunosuke approached. "You return to the fold," Kenta said gruffly, clapping a firm hand on Ryunosuke's shoulder. "The path is uncertain," Ryunosuke admitted, his voice low, "but there is much at stake." Kenta's eyes narrowed with resolve. "Then we stand together. Our clan may be fallen, but our honor endures." The two shared a moment steeped in memory and unspoken pain, the ghosts of their past lives mingling with the hope of a new purpose. Their reunion was not without tension. Kenta's blunt loyalty sometimes clashed with Ryanosuk's cautious strategy, but beneath it all lay a bond forged in fire and blood. Back in a cramped room lit by the flickering glow of an oil lamp, Ryanosuk, Aiko, and Kenta convened their first council. Scattered across the low table were fragmented reports, hastily written notes, and coded messages plucked from the city's underbelly. Ico's nimble fingers traced lines of text, her sharp mind piecing together a mosaic of treachery. "These meetings," she whispered, "they are no mere coincidence. Lord Matsuda's reach extends further than we imagined." Ryanosuk's gaze hardened. "We must tread carefully. One misstep could spell doom for us all." Kenta slammed a fist lightly on the table. "Then we strike before they tighten their grip." The tension in the room was palpable, a volatile mix of urgency and caution. Yet, in their shared purpose, a tentative trust began to take root, a fragile alliance forged in the shadows of Edo's restless nights. As dawn crept over the city, Ryunosuke climbed to a rooftop overlooking the awakening streets. The first light of day painted the skyline in pale gold, the cherry blossoms scattering their petals in the gentle breeze. Below, Edo stirred, unaware of the silent war unfolding within its walls. Ryanosuk's thoughts lingered on the fragile bonds he had forged, the dangers that awaited, and the heavy burden of honor that bound him still. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and betrayal, but for the first time in long months, a flicker of hope kindled within his heart. He whispered a vow beneath the rising sun, the words a solemn promise to those lost and those yet to come. "For honor, for justice, and for the future of this empire, I will stand in the shadows." And with that, the Ronin descended from the rooftop, stepping into the dawn of a fragile new alliance, ready to face whatever darkness awaited. The lanterns of Edo flickered weakly against the creeping dusk, their pale flames barely cutting through the dense fog that curled around the narrow alleys like spectral serpents. Takeda Ryunosuke moved silently beneath the low eaves of the tea house, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. The weight of his katana, sheathed at his side, was a constant reminder of the path he walked, path lined with ghosts of honor and betrayal alike. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of tobacco and boiled tea, mingling with the subdued murmurs of clandestine conversations. Aiko Hanami sat at a corner table, her slender fingers wrapped around a delicate porcelain cup. Her eyes, sharp and alert despite the calm mask she wore, flicked towards Ryunosuke as he approached. Their whispered exchange was cautious, each word measured to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Iko Ryunosuke began, lowering his voice to match the room's hushed tone. "What have you uncovered?" She leaned in, her voice barely more than a breath. "Lord Matsuda's reach extends farther than we feared. Officials we once thought loyal are pawns in his game. He's gathering allies among the disillusioned samurai and corrupt bureaucrats. The shogunate's foundations tremble beneath his ambitions." Ryanosuk's jaw tightened. The growing web of deceit was a noose, tightening slowly but inexorably around the empire's neck. Yet the hardest struggle was not against the enemy without, but the doubts festering within their small circle. Later that evening, beneath the cold gaze of a waning moon, Ryunosuke met with Kenta Moriyama in a narrow alley littered with fallen leaves. The flicker of a lone torch cast long shadows that danced across Kenta's broad shoulders. "You hesitate," Kenta said bluntly, his voice rough with frustration. "Your honor binds you, Ryunosuke, but sometimes honor must bend to necessity. We cannot afford your caution now." Ryunosuke's eyes met his friend's, steady and unyielding. and you would risk everything on reckless action. Brother, we must be patient and precise, or all is lost. The tension between them was palpable, a rift forged by differing visions of loyalty and survival. Yet beneath the discord lay an unspoken bond, the shared scars of a fallen clan and a mutual commitment to justice. Meanwhile, in the opulent chambers of Lord Matsuda Nobuyuki, the true scope of the conspiracy was laid bare. The room was suffused with the scent of incense and the soft glow of lacquered lanterns. Matsuda's presence dominated the space. His dark robes contrasted starkly with the gleaming swords of his assembled conspirators. Japan stands at a crossroads, Matsuda intoned, his voice smooth yet laced with steel. The old order is weak, riddled with corruption and indecision. It is our duty to seize control and forge a new empire, one where strength and vision prevail. His words hung heavy in the air, a chilling promise of upheaval cloaked in the guise of renewal. Among his council, nods of agreement mingled with furtive glances, their allegiance born from ambition, fear, or despair. As the night deepened, Ryunosuke found himself alone on the rain-slicked streets of Edo. The city's usual cacophony was muted beneath the storm's steady drum. Raindrops traced cold paths down his weathered face, mingling with the sweat of unspoken burdens. In that solitude, the Ronin's thoughts churned. The conspiracy's tightening grip was undeniable, yet the path forward remained shrouded in uncertainty. His honor demanded action, but the cost of misstep could be fatal for himself, his allies, and the fragile peace of the shogunate. The web was tightening, and within its shadows, Ryunosuke's resolve hardened. To stand idle was to betray all that he had once sworn to protect. The coming days would test the very core of his being, as friend and foe alike revealed their true faces beneath the empire's twilight. But for now, beneath the relentless rain, a lone figure pressed forward, a samurai bound by honor, walking the thin line between light and shadow. The tension between Ryunosuke and Kenta simmered beneath their shared mission, their arguments echoing the larger struggles of loyalty and pragmatism that defined their fractured world. ICO's information, though invaluable, brought no comfort. Each revelation only deepened the shogunate's peril. In the heart of the city, secret councils convened, and power shifted in unseen ways. Lord Matsuda's cold ambition was a storm-gathering force, promising to sweep away the old order with ruthless efficiency. Ryunosuke's path was clear, yet fraught with uncertainty. The web of shadows was tightening, and to survive, he would need more than skill. With the blade he would need trust, strategy, and a willingness to confront the darkness within and without. As dawn approached, the city held its breath. What sacrifices would honor demand next? The answer lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The river flowed quietly beneath the fading light of dusk, its surface shimmering with the last touches of the sun's warmth. Takeda Ryunosuke sat alone on the worn wooden pier, his gaze fixed on the ripples that danced like restless spirits across the water. The soft murmur of the current mingled with the distant toll of temple bells, creating a fragile harmony that seemed almost at odds with the turmoil within him. Memories, sharp and unyielding, clawed their way to the forefront of his mind, memories of a time when honor was not yet a chain, but a guiding light. He tightened his grip on the worn hilt of his katana, resting across his knees, the familiar weight grounding him even as his thoughts threatened to overwhelm. The faces of his fallen lord and clan appeared like phantoms in the gathering shadows, their silent accusations echoing across the years. The betrayal that had shattered his world was no distant tale. It lived in the ache of every scar and the silence of every empty field where once his comrades had stood. a soft breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of cherry blossoms from the distant groves. For a moment, Ryunosuke closed his eyes and allowed himself to breathe deeply, trying to find solace in the simple beauty that persisted despite the darkness. But the path ahead was murky, and the weight of the samurai code, the very code that had once given him purpose, felt heavier than ever. The quiet was broken by the approach of an elderly figure, his footsteps measured and steady. Elder Shogun, a man whose presence carried the calm authority of years spent in contemplation and battle, settled beside Ryunosuke without a word. He seemed as much a part of the evening as the shadows and the wind, a living bridge between the past and what was yet to come. "The river does not choose its course," Shogun said softly, his voice a low rumble against the stillness. "It flows where it must, carving its way through stone and earth alike. We, too, must find our path, even when the way is not clear." Ryunosuke opened his eyes, meeting the elder's gaze. "I have failed," he confessed, the words tasting bitter. "I could not save my lord, nor protect my clan. How can I carry the honor of a samurai when my past is stained with defeat and betrayal?" Shogun's gaze was steady, unflinching. "Honor is not the absence of failure, but the courage to face it. The code binds us, yes, but it does not imprison us. There is strength in knowing when to bend as well as when to stand firm." The Ronin's lips pressed into a thin line. "I fear that bending is defeat. That compromise will only lead me back to the shadows that swallowed those I once called brothers." And yet, the elder replied, if the river refused to flow around obstacles, it would stagnate and die. So too must the samurai adapt, lest he become a relic. Ryunosuke's mind drifted back to the city streets of Edo, where whispers of conspiracy and betrayal wove through the alleys like poisonous smoke. The fragile peace of the shogunate was threatened, and he stood at the crossroads of duty and survival. His heart beat with tension and determination, an uneasy alliance between the desire to uphold the ancient code and the stark realities that demanded pragmatism. The elder rose, his movements deliberate and unhurried. "Come, walk with me. The cherry blossoms remind us that beauty and loss are intertwined. Even in falling, they give way to renewal." Together, they walked beneath the canopy of pale pink petals drifting silently in the night air. Each step was a measured echo of past lessons and future hopes. Ryunosuke felt the turmoil within him begin to settle, not vanish, but take on a new former quiet flame kindled by wisdom and resolve. "I will carry their memory," Ryunosuke said at last, "not as a weight to drag me down, but as a compass to guide me through the darkness." Elder Shogun smiled faintly, the lines of age softening in the lantern light. "That is the way of the true samurai. Remember, the greatest battles are not always fought with the sword, but within the heart." As the night deepened, Ryunosuke stood alone once more. The river's steady flow, a reminder that even amidst loss and uncertainty, the world moved forward. The echoes of the past whispered still, but now they carried a different message, one of endurance, balance, and the fragile hope that honor, though tested, could endure. His journey was far from over, and the shadows that cloaked the empire still shifted with unseen threats. Yet within him burned a growing determination and resolve to face the coming storm with both the strength of tradition and the wisdom to bend when necessary. The samurai code was not a cage, but a path, and Takeda Ryunosuke was ready to walk it once more, with eyes open to the dawn that awaited beyond the night. The weight of his past did not vanish, but it no longer crushed him. Instead, it became the foundation upon which he would build his future. And as the first stars pierced the velvet sky, Ryunosuke knew that the battle for the soul of the shogunate and his own was only just beginning.